Okay, so welcome back to our Seder series. Today we are going to make baklava. And if you don't know anything about baklava, it is a Middle Eastern dessert. It's so delicious, full of nuts and honey and pastry and just divine, just delicious. So we're going to start with our particular version is we use 4 different kinds of nuts. We use walnuts and almonds, pistachios and pecans. I just love the mixture of nuts. You can make it however you want to. If you want to have just one type of nut, that's fine. If you want to mix up a couple, that's fine. You're gonna want 4 cups of nuts for this recipe. Then you're gonna also want 1.5 heaping teaspoons of cinnamon, and you're gonna want 1/2 teaspoon of cloves. You'll notice in the recipe that we've linked below that you're going to have 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon of cloves. I tend to lean towards the 1/2 teaspoon. It's just my preference. So if you're not a big cloves fan, go ahead and drop that back down to 1/4 teaspoon. And so to help me to make the baklava, I am gonna bring my favorite helper for baklava up because she has been able to help me since she could stand on a chair, and it's just a joy to work with her in the kitchen. So Emily, come on up here. This is my daughter Emily, and she is going to start by adding the nuts to our food processor. You're gonna wanna process your nuts, cinnamon, and cloves together at one time. So she's gonna get started on that right now. After you've processed your nuts and cinnamon and cloves together, this is about the consistency that you want here. It's going to be kind of like almost powder, but not quite. You're going to have some chunks in there. But you don't want any really big chunks because that's just going to be too hard to eat. So if you can see that, that's how it's going to be. And that's what's going to go between your layers of phyllo. Okay, so now that we have our nuts and cinnamon and cloves put together, it is time to start building the layers. And Emily is going to do that, and we're going to ask our good friend Marisol to help her to do that and keep track of the layer numbers. So Marisol, go ahead and come on up here.
Hey.
Hey, yay, I'm so excited you're here to help us with this. So Marisol and Emily are going to start building these layers, and let's get started with that right now. Okay, so for the baklava, you're gonna start by spraying your pan with some cooking spray or greasing it with your margarine. Either way is fine. Then you're going to start layering your phyllo pastry. You're gonna do 7 layers of pastry with margarine between each one. So you'll lay down a piece of phyllo, you'll put your margarine on it, you'll lay down a piece of phyllo and put your margarine on it until you have 7 pieces of phyllo. And then you're gonna put a cup of your nut mixture. You're gonna spread that out evenly across the pastry. And now you're gonna switch to layers of 5. And so you'll do 5 pieces of phyllo. Make sure that you put margarine on every single piece after you lay it down. Then you're going to continue to do that with the nuts and the phyllo 5 times. The last part will be 7 layers of your phyllo pastry. So you're gonna want to end with that. And of course, the margarine on top. Okay, so now that Marisol and Emily have completed our layers, we want to cut it. And it's very important that you cut the baklava before you bake it. because you will not be able to cut it afterwards. It will be super flaky. So we're gonna cut it, and you can cut it into squares or triangles, whatever you want to do. We typically cut it into triangles, so you're gonna make 3 cuts and 4 cuts, and then come back and just divide those squares into triangles for your serving. So now that you have your baklava cut into either squares or triangles, you're gonna wanna put that into a preheated 350-degree oven and bake it for 50 minutes. So now we wanna make the syrup for our baklava. The baklava is in the oven, and this is a great time to do that. When you put the syrup on the baklava, you want either your baklava to be cooled and your syrup to be hot, or you want your syrup to be cooled and your baklava to be hot. So we're gonna start by making the syrup, and I'll show you how to do that next. We're gonna need 1 cup of water, 1 cup of honey, 1 cup of sugar, some lemons. You're gonna want to use the juice or peel or both, and a cinnamon stick for this syrup. So let's start with the water. Put your water in your pot. And the honey, I like to use a spoon because honey's so thick. And put the honey into the pot. And then your sugar. Mix that up. And then you're going to cut your lemons. I'm gonna use the juice of the lemon today, so just juice it right into the pan. You want 1 to 2 teaspoons of juice from your lemon. That's probably about a teaspoon there, and then we're gonna do 1 more. And I put my hand here to catch the seeds because I don't have my lemon squeezer today. And then you're just gonna drop your cinnamon stick in there, and then we'll take it over to the stove and get this going. We'll want to bring it to a soft boil, lower it, and simmer it for about 15 minutes. Okay, so now that your baklava has been cooking for 50 minutes, it's ready to go. And I want to talk for just a second about the pan. You want to use a 9x13 pan. You can use a jelly roll pan or a cake pan. I used a cake pan from my house, so it works just perfectly. And now we've got it all cut, and we're gonna put our syrup. You remember we made the syrup before? And I wanna say about the syrup that it is not necessarily like what pancake syrup. It's pretty thin, and when you put the syrup on the baklava, I just want to reiterate that either the baklava needs to be cool or the syrup needs to be cool, and then you just put that on there, one of them cool, one of them hot. Okay, so now that you've poured your syrup on your baklava, you're gonna give it just a little while. That pastry is just gonna soak up all of that honey and sweet goodness, and it's just gonna make all of that taste even better than it would have without it. So give it just a few minutes to let all that pastry soak up that honey syrup. Okay, so now we have our baklava complete, and I'm gonna just have Marisol come up here. Marisol, come on back up here and taste your creation.
It looks delicious. So tasty.
Yay!